She expected a reaction, maybe a flinch, a late-night text, a desperate call asking, "What's wrong?" But instead, you gave her silence. It started with small things. Her tone changed, her replies slowed, and that softness in her voice became distant. She began to pull away carefully. Like a woman who knew exactly what she was doing, she thought you'd chase. That you'd panic the moment her warmth turned to cold. Because in her world, distance was always met with pursuit. She believed she could control the frame by creating tension, and you would run to fix it. But you didn't blink. No calls, no long messages, no "let's talk." Just presence, just poise. Just the quiet confidence of a man who doesn't beg. And in that moment, something shifted. Because when a woman pulls away and a man remains still, she's forced to face the one fear she hides, that maybe she never had power at all. You didn't ignore her out of pride. You simply refused to play a game that cost your self-respect. You let the silence do the speaking. And that silence, it echoed deeper than any chase ever could. That's when she began to wonder, why didn't he react? Why didn't he chase? Why does it bother me that he didn't blink? This is where everything begins. You didn't need her to say it. You felt it. A subtle change in the way she looked at you. The warmth that once lingered in her eyes now seemed distant, like a fading sunset that once burned golden, now sinking. Behind gray clouds, it wasn't rejection. Not yet. It was something more dangerous. Withdrawal. She started talking less, laughing less, touching less. They noticed she took longer to reply, avoided eye contact a little more, and filled silences with forced smiles. And still, you didn't speak on it, because deep down, you knew this wasn't about losing her. This was about losing your frame. Most men would lean in here, try harder, ask, "Are you okay?" Try to get her attention back with effort, with validation, with emotion. But you didn't, because you recognized the moment for what it was, a test of your center. Silent challenge that said, "If I pull away, will you come chasing?" When you didn't blink, she felt it. She wanted control of the dynamic. She wanted the upper hand. She wanted to know that her absence could move you. But your energy didn't shift. Your tone didn't change. You stayed present, grounded, unmoved, and that confused her more than any words could. In your silence, she heard confidence. In your stillness, she felt your power. You weren't reacting, because you weren't afraid. And to a woman who's used to power through emotion, that's more unsettling than any confrontation. It was the moment she realized, he's not like the others. And that is when the story truly began. She didn't just pull away to see what life felt like without you. She pulled away to see you, not the surface version of you, but the core, the part that reveals itself when tension rises and things stop feeling easy. She needed to know if the man she was drawn to could stay grounded when the ground beneath him shifted, so she sent a signal. Maybe it was through a delayed response, a last-minute cancellation, or a vague mention of needing space. Whatever form it took, it wasn't about honesty. It was about reaction. She wanted to see if your identity was tied to her attention. If the moment she pulled away, you'd go chasing the approval you thought you were losing. But instead, you stood still, not out of coldness, not out of ego, but because you understood. You saw the test for what it was, and you refused to play it. You didn't ask why she changed. You didn't try to fix the mood. You didn't try to win her back. You let her float away, because you knew something she didn't. The man who doesn't chase becomes the question that lingers, and that's exactly what started happening. Confidence in the test began to falter, because when you didn't blink, it made her wonder what she had misunderstood about you. Was he always this calm? Why isn't he reacting? Does he even care? She expected you to lose yourself, to trip over emotion, to prove your value through pursuit. Instead, you proved it by doing nothing, and in that nothing, it became unforgettable. You didn't chase. You didn't fold. You stayed still. That stillness began to echo in the places she thought she had control. You weren't the problem. You were the mirror. And that's what frightened her. She didn't distance herself because she didn't care. She distanced herself because she did. And that caring, that emotional depth, triggered something inside her she didn't know how to control. See, the more a woman feels for a man, the more she starts to fear the loss of him. And instead of leaning into that vulnerability, she retreats into power, the only way she knows how to protect her emotions. So she plays the game. She pulls away, gets cold, acts distant. Not to punish you, but to see if you'll break. Because if you break, it means she has control. It means she can relax knowing you're more invested than she is, that she holds the upper hand. But when you didn't chase, when you didn't blink, it made her sit with herself. It forced her to realize that this wasn't about your actions, it was about her fears. The fear that she wasn't enough, the fear that you might disappear like the rest, the fear that love, when it's real, might actually hurt. And so she tested you. She hoped you'd flinch, because if you did, it would give her the emotional advantage, but instead, she saw the one thing she didn't expect to find, a man who didn't fear her silence. You didn't explain yourself? You didn't try to reassure her. You didn't rush to ease her mind, because your calm wasn't an act. It was who you are. And for a woman built on emotional response, that stillness became a reflection she couldn't ignore. She realized something haunting. Maybe I need him more than he needs me, in that thought. It shook everything. This is where most men fall. They feel her pulling back. And suddenly, the ground beneath them feels unstable. So they reach not from power, but from panic. They send the double texts. They ask, did I do something wrong? They overcompensate with compliments, gifts, and apologies she never asked for. And in doing so, they lose her respect. Because what a woman truly wants isn't a man who dances when her mood changes. It's a man who remains unmoved even when the emotional storm begins. The moment you chase a woman who is pulling away, you communicate one deadly message. My worth depends on your approval, and that message kills attraction. She wanted to feel your depth, not your desperation. But you didn't chase. You didn't explain yourself. You didn't fight to keep her close. Instead, you held your frame, quiet, present, composed, because you knew something that most men don't. That true strength isn't proven in pursuit. It's revealed in restraint. Your silence said everything. Said, I see you, but I don't need to prove myself to stay here. And that shook her, not because she felt rejected, but because for the first time she felt uncertain. She realized she wasn't in control, and not because you took it from her, but because you never gave it away in the first place. You were the rare kind of man who understood that the moment you chase, you lose the game, and that made you more powerful than any words ever could. She didn't want grand gestures or frantic messages. She wasn't waiting for you to throw yourself at her feet or to beg for reassurance. What she truly hoped for, deep down where words don't reach, was something far rarer. She wanted your stillness, that quiet strength that doesn't need validation or explanation. The kind of calm that speaks louder than any declaration. The kind of presence that says, I know my worth, with or without you. She wanted you to stand firm, even when the ground shook beneath you. She wanted to know that your value isn't tied to her approval or absence, because when a man holds himself steady in the face of her withdrawal, it tells her something primal. This man is anchored. This man won't be moved by games or tests. This man won't chase what isn't meant to be chased. And in that unshakable center, she finds something magnetic, a silent invitation to trust. Without fear, she wanted you to be the rock she could rely on, not the storm she could manipulate. So instead of chasing, you chose to show her that your identity is whole on its own. That's the masculine power she's drawn to, not because it's loud or flashy, but because it's real, and when you hold that space, it creates a longing deeper than any chase ever could. Because true attraction isn't about the pursuit, it's about presence, and you gave her that without a word. Time moved on, but something in her stayed still, unsettled. She watched you from a distance, expecting distance to weaken you. But you remained unshaken, calm as ever. The silence that once felt like a void slowly became a question. Why doesn't he chase? Why does he stay steady when I pull away? Why doesn't he react like others do? her mind raced. Trying to decode your stillness, you became a mystery wrapped in quiet power, the kind of presence that doesn't demand attention but commands it anyway. Slowly, her confidence wavered. The power she thought she held slipped. Through her fingers like sand, she started noticing your absence, not as a loss, but as a force pulling her back. Others may have chased and begged, but you stayed silent, unmoved, and strong. And in that silence, the dynamic flipped. She began seeking your attention, curious about the man who didn't blink. Your quiet strength unsettled her expectations and rewrote the rules she thought she controlled. Because when a man doesn't chase, he becomes the prize. And that truth is the most powerful shift of all. She won't say it out loud. Maybe she'll tell herself it was timing, or that she needed space. But late at night, when her defense is lower, she feels it. The ache of what she lost. The man who didn't chase. The one who held steady when others would have fallen apart. That silence you held? It echoed louder than any apology ever could. She realizes now that you weren't indifferent, were unshakable, and that unshakable calm, that refusal to bend to her games made you unforgettable. While others scrambled for attention, you stood tall. While others pleaded, you chose dignity. And in that choice, you became rare. She regrets testing you, regret pushing you away, regrets underestimating the strength behind your stillness. Because the truth is simple. You're not just attractive. You're unforgettable. And that truth will linger long after the silence fades. This is more than a story about silence or distance. It's a lesson in identity, about standing firm when everything inside urges you to chase. It's about the power found not in words or actions, but in presence. When she tested you, she wasn't trying to break you. She was searching for the man who wouldn't be broken. You proved that man exists, so hold on to that strength. Nurture it. Let it grow into the unshakable core of who you are. Because in a world filled with noise, confusion, and fleeting attention, true power lies in quiet confidence. This is your moment to rise above the chase. Above the games, and above the need for approval. You don't need to prove your worth to anyone. You don't need to chase what isn't freely given. You are more than a reaction. You are a presence, and that presence is unforgettable. Let this truth guide you. Become the man who doesn't chase. Become the man who stands tall. Become the man who is simply unforgettable.